So a molecule that is permeable is being transported. Okay? So a molecule, it doesn't matter what it is, molecule that is being transported across the membrane. There's no 2 R's in that. Across a membrane. Doesn't matter what membrane it is permeable. Molecules that is not, or cannot be, not just those is not, but cannot, is impermeable across a membrane. It is what's called impermeable, regardless of how it gets through the membrane. If a molecule can't get through the membrane, it's impermeable. If a molecule can, it's by definition, it's what it means. End story. Sometimes molecules can get through membranes, and sometimes those same exact molecules can't. Why? Because that's what needs to happen to maintain homeostasis. That's what needs to happen for a particular process to occur. Permeability can change. It can be nothing or it can be something. It can get big, it can get small. What's going to dictate that? Under normal conditions, what needs to happen at the time. And these are things I'll talk about over the next 2 semesters. Once again, I'm just laying a foundation for us to learn harder stuff later. All right? So, in this particular picture, the red molecules and the yellow ones are permeable, the red one or the green ones are not. It's showing that these are not getting through the membrane for whatever reason. It could be that 10 milliseconds later, they are. It could be a second later, they are. It just depends. Okay? So again, permeability is ability. All right? Very, very important. And a lot more detail later. This semester especially. Here is our list of passive transport mechanisms and active transport mechanisms. I just have them listed, but they're in your notes in the same exact order. And so what we're going to do is we're just going to take them right in order. We're going to start with the passive mechanisms, that ones that don't need ATP. So let's talk about simple fusion. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time on this one. Or you know what? We're not going to get to that list yet. We're going to talk about generalities of passive transport. So whether we're talking about simple diffusion, osmosis, filtration, or facilitated diffusion, those 4 passive mechanisms that do not need ATP, these things hold true. All right? So let's talk about these things. Again, does not require energy in the form of ATP. Now I had this picture, or we had this picture, because hopefully you do it along with me. We have these arrows going in and out of these cells, in and out of the blood, in and out of the lymph, and into space. These molecules, whatever they might be, will not move passively unless they're given a reason to move. Otherwise, they're not going to, even if they're permeable. You have to give these molecules a reason to move. Again, passive. I didn't say active, I said passive. What gives these molecules a reason to move? What's going to give them a reason to move is gradients. So gradients, and this is in your notes, and I think I have it in quotes or something, a reason to move. Gradients give molecules not the ability to move, that's permeability. Gradients give them a reason to move. So passively, and again, this is what we're talking about here, this is passive transport. Active transport, the story's going to be different. Passive transport, gradients give molecules a reason to move. So molecules will move from point A to point B, from one compartment to the next, if you have 2 things. 1 is permeability, 2 is a gradient. Now what is a gradient? A difference from one compartment to the next. It could be a concentration gradient, meaning the concentration is different across the membrane. It could be a pressure gradient, both of which we're going to be talking about today. So I'll do concentration gradient. This is a cell, and I just chose a cell because I wanted to choose a cell. I could have drawn a blood vessel, I could have drawn a lymph vessel, I could have drawn whatever the heck that I wanted to draw. I just chose to draw a cell. All right, because the movement of these molecules is happening in and out of all of these, on and out, all these particular compartments. I just chose to draw the cell in the interstitial space. Okay? So I want to make that completely clear. All of these transport mechanisms happen in all compartments across all membranes. All right? I'm going to have a molecule, I'm going to call it X. X can be an amino acid, X can be a sodium ion, X can be whatever I want it to be. All right? Or whatever you want it to be. And I'm going to give it a value. This value is going to indicate what its concentration is. Okay? X is going to be inside of the cell as well, but it's going to have a lower concentration. We now have a gradient. A gradient is once again the difference between two compartments regarding either a concentration or a pressure. Concentration gradients give molecules a reason to move. Pressure gradients give molecules a reason to move. And passively, again, this is passive transport. Active transport is a different story. Molecules move down a gradient. So X is going to move into the cell. Y? From a higher concentration to a lower concentration. It's just that simple. If I had another molecule and it's Y, and it was 50 inside the cell and 20 outside the cell, Y moves out, down its gradient. If there is no gradient, there's no reason for it to move. So it's not going to. So if we had a molecule, I don't know, Z, and it was 30 here, and it was 30 here, there's no net movement of Z. There's no reason for it to move. Even if it's permeable, it's not moving. Now, what if X was impermeable? Is it moving? If X is impermeable, will it move? No, it will not. The gradient can be 1,000,000 on one side and 1 on the other. Doesn't matter. It can have the biggest reason to move, but if it can't move because it's impermeable, it will not move. All right? You have to have permeability in order for movement to occur. Okay? Yes?
So, in other words, the permeability is essentially like a mathematical where it's a form of a vector form. Come to think of it. And hence, the diffusion equation.
There are equations you can derive that will quantitate what permeability is. And permeability is actually a measured value. So we can measure permeability. And permeability can be bigger, permeability can be smaller, permeability can be 0. And that's actually something we're going to talk about in just a second. So, good statement for something we're going to talk about in just minutes. Okay? So, getting back to this, gradients give them a reason to move. If they're impermeable, they're not moving. It doesn't matter what the gradient is. Okay? And again, that's passively. Active, it's a different story. All right? Now, there's some things that dictate the movement of these molecules passively. And we're going to be concentrating on this. This right here, don't worry about it. Okay, for our purposes, it's something that we'll really never ever talk about. So just cross it out. I promise you that it will not be on the exam. Those first 3, however, will be something that you'll be responsible for the next 2 semesters and beyond. All right? So let's talk about these first 3, directly proportional. That is the movement of molecules across membranes in a passive manner. So let's draw a picture. We're going to draw 3 panels here. Okay, 3 columns. In the first column, we're going to talk about the magnitude of the gradient. All right, so I'm going to draw a cell. And I'm going to draw a cell. I'm not going to go circle, I'm going to go rectangle this time. Get all nutty. There, that's a cell. Okay? Now, with this particular cell, I'm going to have 2 molecules. X and Y. I'm going to make X, I don't know, let's make it 50 here. Let's make Y, I don't know, 30. And then let's make the concentrations of each X and Y inside the cell, let's make them the same. Let's make them both 10. Okay, we have gradients, right? There's a difference, and the numbers are once again indicating the concentration. okay, of this particular molecule, X and Y. So obviously the movement of both of these molecules is going to be what? In or out of the cell? Obviously into the cell, but they're going to move differently. Why? Because the gradients are different. So there's a bigger gradient for X. So to give yourself a visual, nice big arrow, this is still going to move into the cell, but not as much because the gradient is small. The bigger the gradient, the greater the movement. Very simple, straightforward stuff, by the way. That's what we're doing right now. But here's the problem with the simple stuff, as I keep on stating over and over and over again, is that when I start to put detail onto this kind of stuff, the simple stuff is just gone. Okay? Don't let it happen. All right? Keep the basic stuff in mind when you're studying the more complicated stuff that's coming very, very soon. All right? And actually on the exam, I will pose questions in a way that will make you think about this simple stuff, make you critically think about this simple stuff, but if you remember the simple stuff, you understand what it means, you'll be okay. All right? So the magnitude of the gradient, all that means is the bigger the difference in concentration on either side of the membrane, the more the movement. The driving force is just bigger. All right? So that's number one. Number two, surface area. And this is something that you already talked about with Siebert. And so in this next column, so this is the gradient. This is the magnitude of the gradient. Okay, that's what that's talking about. So you notice, we're just going right in order. This next one's about surface area. Now, Siebert already went over with you guys what surface area is. We're going to draw two cells in this particular case. Same rectangular cell. We're going to draw another cell right here. Same exact length, same exact size, except with one big, huge difference. So those cells are exactly the same size. The membrane for each exactly the same length, except there's greater surface area. We're going to call that cell A. We'll call this cell B. We're going to have the same molecule move. We're going to say it's X again. Let's make X 50. In this one, let's make X 10 here. Let's make X 10 here. We have the exact same gradient in each case. We have the same exact molecule moving into each of these cells because we're going to assume permeability. But we're going to give ourselves a visual showing there's going to be more movement of X in that cell than there is in that cell. Why? Because the surface area is greater. You guys understand what surface area means? Why the surface area in A is bigger? There's more membrane there. Let's just make believe that that's a road in A. And this is a road in B, and we had a car. Each car started right here. Which car would get to this end quicker? A or B? The road in B or the road in A? A car would get from here to here if the road was straight than if the road was all windy. Why? There's more road. There's more road, there's more membrane from here to here than there is from here to here. Why? Because it's doing this. Tell me what those things are, by the way. Microvilli. There are cells within your body that have this kind of structure because it's their job to move lots and lots and lots of molecules across the membrane, and they will. Have you guys told where these cells are found? One of the places? Small intestine. You eat stuff like fats and carbs and proteins. You digest them down into amino acids, fatty acids, right? Monosaccharides. Those things need to make their way into the blood. They have to get through these cells first. And if you have a cell whose structure it is that has a really big surface area, it is a more efficient process because more stuff moves through it. Okay? There's just more area for things. I just draw one big arrow. But when it comes to the movement of molecules across the membrane, it's happening at each and every one of these points. It's just not one big, huge rush of things. I'm just giving you a visual with the arrow. All right? But if this was a molecule X moving through a bunch of transporters, moving through a bunch of these things, we can put more of these things in this membrane than we can in this one. There would be more doors in this membrane, so more stuff can move.